Welcome to the Swing Left Nebraska podcast that's all about energizing communities, advocating for change, and making a difference in the great state of Nebraska. We'll dive deep into the heart of Nebraska's progressive movement, exploring the stories, strategies, and initiatives that are shaping the political landscape. We're here to amplify the voices of candidates, local activists, and community leaders who are fighting for a more equitable, inclusive, and prosperous Nebraska. Swing Left Nebraska is your go-to resource for staying informed about key issues, upcoming elections, and how you can get involved. Whether you're a seasoned organizer, a concerned citizen, or someone who's looking to make a difference for the first time, we've got you covered. Get ready to be inspired and let's embark on this incredible journey together. Hello and welcome. My name is Leia and I am thrilled you are here to tune in to another episode. Cindy Maxwell-Ostdiek joins us again to unpack everything that happened last week at the Capitol, including an update about confirming Steve Cory, Legislative Bill 164, Legislative Bill 388, the hearing to censure State Senator Halloran for his Vogel remarks, and much more. So let's do a show. Cindy, another busy week in the books. So we have, as always, a lot to get into, a lot to unpack. I appreciate you joining us on the Swing Left Nebraska podcast this week. I'm excited to get into it with you. Let's start with a wrap up. We were talking about Steve Cory. The Nebraska legislator on Monday confirmed him as CEO of the State Department of Health and Human Services, accepting Governor Jim Pillen's controversial pick. The vote came after several senators led an organized opposition that raised questions about his past employment and concerns about where he draws the line between his private beliefs and his public job. Democratic Senator Mike McDonald of Omaha joined legislative conservatives in voting to confirm Cory 28-8 after 2 hours of debate. And that again was on Monday in an officially nonpartisan legislator. So what are your thoughts on that?
So disappointed. There's many different areas to be concerned regarding Dr. Cory, not least of which is the fact that he is leading such a large organization now within our state with so much responsibility. And the people that he would be serving, he is very publicly telegraphed that he doesn't support. It's just plain as day with his social media posts that he does not support all Nebraskans. And so that's very disappointing. And I think what's even more troubling regarding the legislators and their oversight with this particular appointment is that there's a lot of fiscal questions and ethics issues with Dr. Cory and his employment with the Epiphany consulting company that he didn't disclose when he was applying for this or when he shared with the governor and the public with his forms and applications and notifications. It's really troubling that that company was something he didn't disclose. And then there was a $10 million no bid contract awarded to the company basically within days of his appointment. So it's just really all very murky. And this kind of forthright type of requirement that we should have for people who have such important authority in our state is disappointing that the senators were not willing to really dig into this and get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. So more to come with that. And as always, if there's any updates, we will provide them for you.
And Senator Hunt did make a motion to reconsider, but the speaker has not taken that up. That's just really hanging out there right now. We'll have to see whether he schedules that vote. I was surprised that it was something that had been delayed.
Yeah, that is a little bit surprising, I'd say. Now, Nebraska lawmakers advance inland port bill that seeks more public input in North Omaha development proposal aimed at increasing community input to the multi-millions of dollars of economic development plan for North Omaha advance easily Tuesday to its next round of legislative debate. That was LB 164. In essence, modifies a 2021 law that created inland port districts. These are state approved areas ruled by independent boards that oversee development in up to 300 acres and also have the power to issue bonds to help pay for construction. Before the legislation moved forward on a 31-0 vote, it was amended to include a transfer of $30 million from another fund into the Inland Port Authority Fund for a planned innovation hub to be located in North Omaha. It also seeks to create child care grant programs that had been part of another state senator's bill. So that's a pretty good thing to see. What would you say?
I think it's good that they would be making sure to involve the stakeholders. When we're talking about these communities, it is important that they actually be listening to the people that live there. And so I think this is a good thing as far as what it seems that Senator Wayne and McKinney and the other senators are working on. So I want to make sure that I keep watching that particular bill as it moves through for sure.
Yeah, so we'll continue to keep our eyes on that and provide any updates as they come. In an unusual move, a state legislative committee pulled back and then voted to re-advance a bill Tuesday calling for a hike in state sales taxes to facilitate a shift away from local property taxes. This is LB 388, the major property tax relief proposal from Governor Jim Pillard was voted out of the Legislative Revenue Committee on Thursday, but objections were raised saying the vote violated a legislative rule that requires an actual draft of the amendment or a bill to be present before it could be voted out to the full legislator for debate. I know you have a lot to say on this topic, so I know our audience is eager to hear what you have to say, Sydney.
There is so much that it is really hard to keep track of. All of the various topics these last few weeks have been condensed time frame wise with the appropriations and revenue discussions. And to me, in a way, it seems backwards the way we approach it here in Nebraska. But the appropriations bills, of course, that have been focused on as far as like what money would be available depends on what revenue, of course, that we bring into our state. And these bills, it seems for the most part, when I've been following the legislature, the revenue committee generally tries to restrict the revenue we bring to our state. It seems like the focus usually is on cutting revenue. This particular plan to increase revenues via the sales tax, getting rid of some of the exemptions and the increase of the sales tax, I think they're trying to stress that it would be phased in based on actual performance, but it's panned. There's hardly anyone interested in this bill, it seems, from the right or the left, from small town or metropolitan areas. And then all the major chambers of commerce have opposed it as well. So I just think most people are not interested in this kind of full solution to some of our tax types of issues. And when we talk about property tax and how important that is and the impact it's having on struggling Nebraskans, including people on fixed income in our rural areas, we do need to find solutions to that. But shifting the burden of these investments, because we do want to invest in our communities, we do want to make sure that we're providing necessary services. Our state does not run well when we're not making sure to address those of us that need these additional services, those of us that obviously need services regarding safety and education and all these other areas. If we try to basically put in a regressive sales tax, the burden will fall on those struggling Nebraskans who can least afford it. And I know that there's a lot of discussion back and forth about competing data and charts and graphs, and there's a lot of accusations flying. Specifically, Senator Linehan seems to like to call out the Open Sky Policy Institute. It's actually an amazing organization, and the people there are working very hard to produce information that Nebraskans can view and the senators can use as reliable and fact driven. Is disappointing that the Revenue Committee, led by Senator Linehan, is so tardy in putting together these proposals. We're talking right now, it is the end of March, right? So we just had the second day of a 60-day session. And right now they're producing these massive proposals. they seem to be slapdash, that they're having to pull it back to committee, bring it back out because of these amendments. It really is something that we should not be doing here at the last minute like this. There were other revenue bills, including one that was introduced by Senator Bostar regarding his proposal for for caregiver tax credits. The Revenue Committee attached other bills to that, including one that was quote unquote an unfriendly amendment. Senator Bostar had voted against it. It was his bill, and they attached one from Senator Albrecht that had to do with crisis pregnancy centers, which are something that major medical organizations say are disreputable, that they are not fact based, they're not science based, and they actually have been producing dis and misinformation instead of healthcare. And so some of these things here at the last minute, it seems chaotic and murky. And I think that we should expect better from our revenue committee. And they should be not only serving their colleagues better in the actual legislature so they can make good decisions, but here, all those of us in the second house should have more time to digest these very important details as well.
I agree. Thank you so much for that feedback and for that update on that. So we'll continue to, as always, keep our eyes peeled and provide updates as they come. Now, lawmakers advance Nebraska age verification bill for porn. A lead critic of the proposal said the state doesn't have the proper guardrails to support the measure and questioned how it'd be enforced. Lawmakers gave first round approval Wednesday to a legislative proposal that could require Nebraskans to verify their age before accessing online pornographic content. Interesting enough, at least 9 states have such laws as proposed in Senator Dave Merman's legislative bill 1092. It would require commercial businesses that include substantial portion of material harmful to minors defined as more than 1/3 of the total website material to have reasonable age verification method. What are your thoughts on this one?
Okay, so I'm just going to say very first, I do not want children to be accessing inappropriate materials such as porn. Okay, let me just say that right now. I have teenagers. This is something we're all very concerned about. This particular bill, though, is not going to address that issue. This bill only addresses these very specific organizations, and it's troubling that we would be expecting that adults who have the ability to access these materials, we shouldn't be putting in place processes that actually expose them to potential privacy issues regarding their data. There's just a lot on this bill that is problematic. I don't disagree that it is something that we're concerned about, that children would have access to these materials, but this bill doesn't do that. So many people access that really some very harmful materials through social media sites and things like that. This doesn't address it at all. I hope that the senators would take the time required, roll up their sleeves, and actually come up with a workable solution instead of whatever this is.
I agree. You are so right. Now, a host of legislative proposals gained final approval Thursday morning, including expanded support for mothers, vape regulations, and changes to the state helmet law. The slew of bills that now go to Governor Jim Pillen for approval also included increasing penalties and investigative power to child labor violations, expanding coverage under the medical assistance program to certain breast pumps and lactation visits, and creating 2 new honorary days in the state law. Should Pellin approve the measures, most proposals would become law in 3 months. If Pellin vetoes any bills, the legislator has the opportunity to seek an override. So there are just a lot of good, bad, and ugly and wonderful things that happened on Thursday morning. What can you say to these things?
It was good to see some good news. And there are some really good bills in this set of statutes. So when we talk about the prenatal plus program, that's just one thing that I am so excited about because it's going to be really supporting the mothers who most need these services. And the inclusion of Senator Boson's bill about Medicaid coverage for continuous glucose monitors, that was something I didn't even realize we didn't cover. So I'm so glad that they moved forward with that. Now, do I wish that they weren't sunsetting this bill in 28 so that we have to come back and have a future legislature support these pregnant Nebraskans? I'm not thrilled about that. I know that they also pulled back on some of the amounts that we were talking about, and there's a cap on the Medicaid piece for the continuous glucose monitors. Unfortunately, there were a number of Nebraska mothers on Medicaid that needed those monitors. If the funds had been all utilized, then those mothers would just be out of luck. So I don't want to be a downer, but I'm glad that they moved forward on this. It's an important piece of legislation. Really laud Senator Dungan for shepherding this through. And I really also agreed with the bill brought by Senator Hughes regarding the vape bill. And I think that it is a good thing that we be doing everything we could to restrict and minimize this type of nicotine delivery system. We're finding out so much more about how harmful it is and anything we could do to try to keep it from kids for sure. And the helmet law piece, one passed last year. I know I'm a little bit in the minority about that, but I'm old enough and from Iowa where I used to ride with my dad. And I know what it's like when you have people on motorcycles without helmets and just really how dangerous motorcycles are in general with not having as many safety features, of course, being surrounded like you are in a car. I think trying to protect people and their head is something that's a no brainer. But I guess this was something necessary to try to harmonize some of the state laws with federal. That was included in the child labor piece by Senator Reevy. I am so pleased that they are focusing on good child labor laws here in Nebraska as opposed to other states, which has been something that is they've been moving in the wrong direction. So that was a good piece. And then one of my most favorite bills were brought both by Senator Jen Day, and that was regarding breast pumps for mothers here in the state, and then also lactation consultants. And this type of coverage is just incredibly important when we talk about how we need to support mothers and babies here in our state, and especially working mothers. And when they return back to the workforce, that they have these breast pumps available. And if they're choosing to feed their baby via breastfeeding, the pumps are a requirement. So I'm so glad they moved forward with that too.
Yeah.
If you were looking at the same article I was, which was the Nebraska Examiner, they also talked about the Nebraska Missing Persons Day. And we're talking about missing Indigenous women and then also celebrating Malcolm X.
Yes.
And I think that those are very important days that we should recognize. And so I'm glad that they move forward with that.
I agree. Those are really important days to be aware of and to celebrate. Emotional public hearing over rare request to censure state senator ended Thursday with the committee deferring action until after the 4-day weekend. That came despite a request by State Senator Michaela Kavanagh of Omaha for immediate decision whether to censure fellow Senator Steve Halloran of Hastings for his bogus statements directed at Senator Kavanaugh during a floor debate on March 18th over an obscenity bill. The longer it takes, the more harm you're causing, Kavanaugh told members of the Legislative Executive Council, which handles such internal complaints. So I did get a chance to catch that hearing, and it was very emotional. It was Michaela Kavanagh in front of a committee with all men except for one, Senator Slama, who did come up and support her in a very supportive way. What are your thoughts on that?
I This is such a difficult topic, and this has been a very trying time for Nebraskans across the state. And I just really want to center Senator Kavanaugh in this and say how proud I am of the strength that she has brought to this. And I really appreciate her and that she is not only bringing this resolution regarding this specific situation. Of course, it is about this specific situation and how Senator Halloran behaved, but it also is to draw attention to this issue in a larger way within our state and the legislature as well. And so I really do appreciate that. And one thing I didn't realize, I think a lot of people are aware, this resolution was introduced by Senator Kavanaugh, but Senator Slama signed on. She is a co-signer on this particular resolution, number 335. And I do really appreciate that. A lot of people didn't realize until they watched this executive board hearing the other day. And it just really drove home the fact that Senator Slama is the only woman on the executive board. And that is a decision the senators made when they were doing assignments at the beginning of this biennium. And I hope they never make this mistake again. I think that we should be introducing as much diversity across the board for all of our committees. It was very emotional. I was there. I went and attended because I wanted to be there in support on Thursday. And when Senator Kavanaugh came in and sat down, I was really heartened to see the other senators that came in support and sat in the row behind the testifier desk. And they were just shoulder to shoulder in their support for her. And that was Senator Walls, Senator John Kavanaugh, her brother, and Senator Duncan, and then also Senator Day and Senator DeBoer. They all came to be there in support. Senator Kavanaugh was transparent and honest about how this has impacted her and her family, in addition to the Nebraskans that have been reaching out. Her dad wrote a letter that she read, and a lot of people might not remember that her father is a previous Nebraska legislator and US congressperson. I saw hardly any dry eyes in the room when she read that letter. And then there was an exchange between her and Senator Slama about how the women in the legislature can support each other in these times and that we need to make sure and work towards change and bringing kind of modern views about what is acceptable in the workplace and in public space, like the Nebraska legislature is. No one is saying that we don't believe in free speech. No one is saying that anybody's speech should be restricted regarding some of these bills and the discussion and the debate. But there is a line that is crossed when we're talking about sexual harassment. And this behavior by Senator Halloran was very troubling. And she even discussed how there was some foretelling about his floor debate the other week. Senator Halloran apparently came up to Senator Kavanaugh and Senator Walls and started talking about what he was going to be reading in a way that was inappropriate. And Senator Kavanaugh said, "I'm out. I don't want to listen to this," and walked away. And then for him to invoke her name when he was reading those excerpts is just really something that points out a pattern. And I think a lot of us can recognize that it takes a certain kind of viewpoint to behave like that. And it's really unbecoming to the legislature. It is disrespectful to Senator Kavanaugh and everyone in that room. And it is also a terrible leadership example for the rest of our state. And I had submitted an online comment. Apparently, there's about 500 of us that did. And the state Republican Party put out a poll to ask people to submit online comments supporting Senator Halloran. So it looks like the results were about half and half with proponents and opponents. But basically, what I shared with my comments was that it was disappointing that more Nebraska legislators had not stood up regarding this matter, that they were silent, and it was making it clear to everyone across the country, not just in our state, that the vast majority of them condone sexual harassment of their colleagues. And it's not the example we want to be setting for our state. How can we attract talented candidates for elected office or employees to work in the Buchanan role when we can't expect that they would have accountability or dignity or safety? What basically serves as a warning to everyone about the character of the body that would excuse or tolerate such behavior. So I do hope they move forward with this censure. I had called on Senator Halloran to resign. I believe that someone who is willing to behave this way on the floor of the legislature, he is term limited. I believe that he should just apologize sincerely and then go home. We need policies in place to prevent this type of harassment and behavior in the future. And Senator Aguilar, who chairs this committee, said that they would be revisiting it on Tuesday. So I guess we will be seeing then whether they will be moving this to the floor of the legislature. Senator Halloran chose not to attend the hearing. He apparently also had the opportunity, he could have testified, but instead he submitted a letter there was just no opportunity for back and forth or questions. He chose not to attend. Apparently, he sent a letter, it was shared online, where he was asking the executive board not to broadcast this hearing on Nebraska public media. This hearing was broadcast because it was a public hearing and Nebraskans deserve to observe. There's not transparency, the expectation that the second house would be able to observe regarding this resolution. So I am very proud with the Nebraska Legislative Study Group that we do live stream the broadcasts from Nebraska Public Media and we put them on our YouTube page for anyone who would like to watch at a later time, including the senators. I guess we'll see what happens on Tuesday, but I again just want to say how much I admire Senator Kavanaugh and her strength for basically standing up in the face of probably pretty overwhelming calls to just let it slide.
I agree. Yeah. So we'll have an update for you next week on how that lands. As we wrap up, Sydney, do you have any final words for the people?
I really think it's important, and I think I say this every single week, but please call your senator and let them know during these last few days of the session, some very large decisions will be made about the direction our state takes with our revenues and appropriations. And those priorities will impact not only you and your loved ones and your business, but your neighbors as well. We have quite a few things that haven't been scheduled yet on the agenda, but they're sitting out there on general file. Many priority bills, maybe even still are sitting in committee. If you have a position on any of those, you should be in touch with your senator. Let them know whether you want them to, take time or not on those particular issues. And I think one of the things I just really want to stress too is that at the end of the session, when we come down to where the governor is signing these bills or not, and the vetoes start coming in, be in contact with your legislature about overriding any vetoes that might come as well, because that is something that we're seeing. This governor has no hesitation to veto something that he doesn't believe in. There have been some updates just in the last day or two regarding developmental disability issues. And I know that the ARC of Nebraska has been really good to try to update and to question the director. There was a press conference with the governor the other day. And so there's a lot of things that we really in Nebraska believe in supporting our neighbors, especially our vulnerable and struggling neighbors. And if you aren't letting the senators know that is a priority, they might not realize that we're asking for them to really step up and make sure the governor is aware that's what we want them to do. So hopefully we can get through these last few days of the session with some more good bills and avoiding anything that's really harmful.
I love it. Thank you for leaving us with that. My message to people today is lots of campaigns are looking for volunteers to write postcard, knock on doors, and make phone calls. Now is the time. We are heating up, getting close to the primary election on May 14th. In the show notes, I will link Women Who Run and the Nebraska State Democratic Party. Good links to get you to the people who will connect you to campaigns that are looking for volunteers. My message is don't just vote, volunteer and find an avenue that works best with who you are. So if it's writing postcards, making phone calls, or even knocking doors, I know every minute that you can dedicate to helping good candidates get elected is so appreciated by the campaigns, and it does make a difference. So that's what I will end with today. So, Cindy,
Awesome.
thank you again for all your time, all your dedication, going down to Lincoln, paying attention for us so you can bring that information to share with our audience is so appreciated. And I look forward to catching up with you next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Swing Left Nebraska podcast. Our show aims to provide the latest updates on progressive politics and grassroots initiatives across the state. We appreciate your support and dedication to building a brighter, more inclusive future for all Nebraskans. Remember, your voice is powerful and your support is essential to advance this movement. If you enjoyed today's episode and believe in the positive change we're advocating for, Please take a moment to share this podcast with your friends, family, and fellow Nebraskans. Let's spread the word and grow our community of passionate progressives. Remember to subscribe to the Swing Left Nebraska on your favorite pod platform to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Lastly, we would greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a rating and review. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more people who share our mission. Until next time, let's mobilize, let's take action, let's go.
Ready, set, go. Get ready to go.